So mobile devices are crazy. I'm actually going to use mine right now to keep myself on track during this presentation. But here are 3 things that caught my attention recently. A homeless man was arrested in Miami, Florida for charging his phone in a public park. He was eventually dismissed, but that happened. This was a headline from the Miami Herald about a month ago. Number 2, New Yorkers walked 40 blocks to get to any location where they could charge their devices following Hurricane Sandy. Oftentimes, they would just pass someone who had a spare outlet on the street, or maybe go to an ATM lobby. And the third is 10,000 people gathering in Zuccotti Park in order to get their message out during the Occupy Wall Street protests. And this is actually where my story starts. So about a year ago, I was crashing with my sister in the financial district. And every day I would walk past the Occupy Wall Street movement. And it was crazy. Every single day, the community would evolve and strategies would develop. But consistently, they were always using some type of device to get their messages out. So eventually, my curiosity just got to the point where I couldn't contain questions to myself, and I had to get answers. So I walked up and asked one of the organizers, where can I go if I want to keep my phone plugged in just the same way that you guys are? And it turned out the answer was a hot dog vendor's cart. So these were the early stages in the protest. So immediately, my mind was blown. And my first thought was, what else can they be using? So I started doing some Google searches, and eventually, actually from the very beginning, a solar-powered charging station seemed like the only thing that could fit the situation. So I did some more Googling to figure out what did I need to do to get the bare minimum in order to just prove this concept. So I went on to Amazon. That led me then to Amazon. And for less than $100, I bought the equipment to allow up to 3 people, really around 2 people, to charge their mobile devices in a public spot. And that was really the start of a lot. So I was out there at the park for maybe 10 minutes when a small line formed, and I said, okay, where else can this go? Where else does this belong? What is this actually in front of me? So I started going and calling a bunch of public spaces. Actually, right there at the park, I walked across the street, pulled out my mobile device, and found the numbers to some parks around the city. And I would make some phone calls. I would say, first I called East River Ferry, and I said, I have an idea, how does something like this happen? And I would call another park, and I would say, I have an idea, how does something like this happen? And I would always get the same response of first, just utter enthusiasm, followed by, but try it somewhere else first. So eventually, I started to learn, though, that there was a need for this. And I even started to get an idea of what this machine might look like and the role that it would play and who its customers would be and how it should function. So I kept calling places, and eventually Bryant Park ended up answering the phone call. And little did I know that in New York City, first of all, and this is true in a lot of urban spaces around the world, growing more and more every day, but public spaces are actually operated by private entities, often nonprofits, on behalf of the city. And Bryant Park is one of these situations. So they actually own a few different areas and operate a few different areas in Midtown Manhattan. So I called them, and like everyone else, they said, yes, this sounds like an amazing idea. But unlike everyone else, they said, come talk to us a little more about it, though. So I did. I took my ideas and my machine that looked like this, and I took it to their office and I said, this is just what I've done so far, but I have ideas for things to do in the future. And they said, okay, show us what you have in mind, but know that whatever you do, it has to be sexy. And I said, okay, of all the things, if someone said to me in the beginning of that day, give me 10 words that you expect to hear in this meeting, sexy was not going to make that list. So I did just what they said. And I took a 3D model that I developed just from talking to a few public spaces. And I developed a machine. I built it in my apartment. These are some images of me. I had like what I'm calling now a little assembly party. And I sent my 3D sketch to a local metal shop, and I ordered some more components online. And just built this machine to test in Bryant Park after testing it first on my roof here in Brooklyn. So now the machine goes from the roof to Bryant Park, and it sat in Bryant Park for a few months. During this time, really, I feel like this is the first time I can really bring into this talk the theme of community through experience. It was during this time when I realized, okay, something is actually happening here. Something is building. There's some type of potential. Somebody sees something. So I started calling friends from college saying, hey, just come check this out. Maybe it will go somewhere. Maybe it won't. I started talking to some of my sister's friends, and I said, do you guys have any idea how to get stuff like this done, or like any ideas for what to do next? And a few months later, I had now a team developed. A few months later, now we are all working together to take this to the next step. So the machine sat in Bryant Park for a few months, and then suddenly, a few months ago, Hurricane Sandy hits. Of course, I think everyone remembers this like iconic New York Magazine cover. So New York Sandy hits, and I was in Brooklyn, so I was a little detached from the true impact of the storm. But the first day I biked from Brooklyn to Manhattan, and it was eerie coming off of the Brooklyn Bridge, and suddenly it's like the world had stopped in an area where the world never stops. The lights are always on, but now the lights were off. The pedestrian signals are always on, but now the pedestrian signals are off. There are people directing traffic, which isn't always, which is not an abnormal sight, but it is abnormal to be on every block. And just in general, Manhattan was quiet. So again, I said it was just a natural next step to say, okay, then what we are doing seems to be relevant. And as I biked up through Midtown, I saw that more and more so. So I would see sites like this, people gathering around tables, charging their phones. And so eventually, of course, we took our machine to the Flatiron Business District, where there were also some people who were still without power. And these are images of us in the Flatiron District doing just exactly that. This is Ron, our VP of Engineering to the right, explaining to people initially who we are, what we're doing out there, why we are there. And it was crazy, it was fascinating, because the level of interest, people were just as curious as I was. People were as curious as to how these people were charging their phones, the same way I was curious about how people were not charging their phones before. So we took the machine out there, we were there for a few hours, we charged about 200 phones that day. And slowly we started to make observations of what was happening here. And to go back to the first time I talked to Bryant Park, it was obvious that they had something in their mind about what this idea could be, the role that it could play in public spaces, and what the future might look like if this were to be a part of it. And of course, I guess that is something that could be assumed coming from what they do. But for me, it was just a completely eye-opening experience to this world of social interaction in public spaces, and having controlled environments, and having areas where when you're walking down the sidewalk, you're not just walking down a sidewalk, you're walking in an area that was curated for you to have a certain type of experience. So we took this machine out, and we were in the Flatiron District in front of the Flatiron building here. And back to this picture, there are people sitting around, there are people interested, and there are people talking. But when you introduce chairs to the situation, suddenly you have a whole new element of social interaction. And people are starting to become friends. People are starting to learn each other's names. People are exchanging business cards. So then we added a table to the situation. And now strangers are interacting. It's a more intimate experience. And this is something that I know that the Bryant Park designers, we work with one main designer at Bryant Park. His name is Ignacio Ciocchini. he designs a lot of the street furniture, including the city bench, which you will see in various places around the city. And the city bench itself, actually, so this is like New York City's standard bench, crazy feature. So it has wide seats to make you feel comfortable enough to sit next to other people, but in a way that will make it also comfortable for you to have conversation. So that is just one aspect to like highlight the scrutiny to which they design these, even the benches in public spaces. And this was my first eye-opening experience realizing that, hey, there's a social component to actual street furniture. So now we say, okay, we've learned all of these lessons, so now I know that this machine might have a place in the world. I know that there's a social component to this. So now when we take this idea and the engineering that my team has done and take the expertise of Bryant Park and what they know about street furniture and the way that we all collectively are approaching this from the social aspect, knowing that in New York City, public spaces are first a rarity, so the experience has to be that much more important and enriching. Also, you know, New York City has this reputation where people are just like keeping their heads down, keeping their headphones in, and keeping them to themselves. But that's not true. Like, all human beings are social creatures, and it's important. In New York City, I just think you have that much more potential to be that much more social because there are that many more people. So we take these lessons into account, and then what does the machine look like? Because we know what it looked like before, it looks like this. And so what will the one look like now that we started putting our lessons into practice? So we started piecing that together. So what does a machine look like, especially for New York City? So it has to be simple. You have to just walk up to it and you have to be able to plug in. When you see it, you should know what to do, and it should be relaxing. It has to be portable. So these spaces have to be organic. The public spaces will be different from tomorrow than they are today, and it's important to the operators of the public spaces that they maintain that level of versatility. And together, when you put all of these pieces into one product, you have this new idea and this new concept, a solar phone charging station that goes in these public spaces that's taking something that is usually keeping us away from each other because we are so absorbed in our phones. And when it's dead, now you can walk up to this machine. It's inviting. I also learned in this process that circles are friendlier than squares. So this machine is inviting. It's welcoming you to come back, plug your phone in, get back connected into this world, but also explore new interactions in the world that is immediately in front of your face. So now New York City itself is engaging clean energy. And this clean energy itself is engaging. So we are taking this and trying to put it now throughout New York City with this philosophy going into the design process. But how do we actually go about putting this in throughout New York City? So New York City actually has a few strategies for implementing sustainability and pedestrian-friendly experiences into their spaces. So the first is Plan YC. Plan YC is the umbrella. How will I describe it? It's like the umbrella plan, the umbrella project, and the umbrella strategy for all of New York City's sustainability practices, ranging from transportation to recycling to pedestrian areas. So this is something that the city already has their eyes open on and open for. And a part of Plan YC is Vision 2020, which is this top right-hand picture. So New York City has over 500 miles of waterfront property. And in this Vision 2020 plan, the goal is to create and develop these waterfront properties with an air of pedestrian friendliness so that people now have outdoor spaces where they can interact, where they can play, where they can meet new people, where they can hang out with people that they already know, where they can just spend time outdoors in an urban environment. And on the bottom, we have the South Bronx Greenway, which is another example of how New York City is striving to create more places for us to enjoy the outdoors in this otherwise concrete city. So that is the city's overall sustainability plan for putting any type of technology and any type of strategy in place that contributes to the sustainability of the city and also increasing social interactions. But how will we actually put our machines around? So we have a few ideas. So first, the machine that I just showed you guys, that can go in a few different areas, like pedestrian plazas and parks. The first few will show up in Bryant Park and a few other areas. But also using existing infrastructure. Existing infrastructure is something that's just really important to consider in the area of sustainability. And this is an image of, it's actually, I didn't even mean to find this, but it's an ad campaign from Vitamin Water. But someone here is charging their phone at a bus stop. So why not just put a solar panel on top of this bus stop, and now you have a bus stop that is powered by itself, so you can do a lot with it, ranging from like enabling people to charge their phones, to now you can power like digital screens, so now you have more information for people on the go. So we are going to first take our machine and put it in a few different like pedestrian zones, but we're also going to develop products that can hop on to existing infrastructure. So that's our strategy for implementation. So now the community aspect for implementation. In order for me to get started and pursue this project, there were so many different people who played a part. So Incubate NYC, for example, is an accelerated program here in the city who got one of the projects, immediately grabbed me in and said, these are the steps that you need to do if you want to make something happen. So that was really helpful along the way. Bryant Park obviously helped out a lot. Alley NYC is like where we are housed now. And ITAC there in the center is also really interesting. They're also an accelerated program funded by the state to take people in New York State with ideas and commercialize them to final products. So the community itself, I was new to New York City, and I feel like to a certain extent, New York City is one of the few places where this can really happen, but maybe I'm just biased. But I just slowly developed a community within this community, and I think that speaks a lot to the power of a community and what can happen when someone has an idea and people take it seriously, and the support is there for them to take it into fruition. So our next step is this pilot program that we have planned for next year called Charge NYC. So Charge, we're going to take about 50 of these machines and just scatter them throughout Midtown Manhattan, working with a few business improvement districts over there. And we are going to just watch and see what happens. We are just going to have this infrastructure pop up in the middle of Manhattan and see how society reacts to it, see how it is used, see the actual impact that it will have. So how can now the community help make us that? How can the community then help make that happen? We'll all get there. So community liftoff. So I'm just a big proponent of crowdfunding in general. And Rocket Hub, who spoke at TEDxBrooklyn last year, is a great way to provide especially funding for local projects. You can just go on Rocket Hub, find local projects that you truly believe in, and that is how you can then curate your own community and your own experiences and the things that happen in there. And I think that when you start to combine crowdfunding with community development, really powerful things can happen. So we plan on having a Rocket Hub campaign in order to help make this happen, so that all New Yorkers in the near future, the goal is late spring, early summer, to have this network of solar charge stations out in New York City. So that is Green Barrel. Thank you very much.